Break a leg, guys.
You
Yeah.
too. All right. And there, here we go. Welcome,
Hello,
welcome,
hello.
welcome, everybody. Episode 31 is live on the air for you, or if you're watching the replay, it's on for you as a replay. This is the podcast Unlimited Wisdom with Robert Hollis. I'm Craig A. Jackman, along with Matt Hollis, and we are so glad to have you here with us today. And we hope everybody had a fantabulous Thanksgiving. Gentlemen, I hope you did too. I know we
Oh, yeah.
celebrate giving thanks for everything that we have that is coming to us. It's just a great day to reflect on where we are. And, you know, it's interesting. You think about it, giving that this is the time of the year, the year is ending. If we're going to call, you know, getting ready for the new year, because I know a lot of people do that. It's a perfect time to reflect on where we're at, where we've come from for the entire year, and get ready for where we are going. Of course, that's what most people think about, but we like to think, why wait? Let's get do
Yeah.
it. Let's get to do it now.
So did you have for people that celebrate Thanksgiving, now that Matt taught me how to use AI, I jump on there and say, oh, how many countries actually do that? And
Right.
for my European friends that watch our podcast now, I understand why a lot of you are so negative. It's like you don't even have a day to be thankful.
Well, see,
What
now
about
you
what about
always
every
teach
day?
us, yeah, you always teach us we should be thankful every day.
Yeah, yeah. And so, yeah, don't dedicate a day to it. You know what I mean? Make it an everyday deal, which I do. I do. That's part of my morning ritual. And I was thinking everyone gets excited and thankful for Thanksgiving. And then, of course, when you're thankful and around, people that are, you're supposed to enjoy to be around, that the next day is you need to get out and buy stuff. the
Yeah, the
commercialization,
setup.
the commercialization of everything. But
Just
yeah,
wait because there's gonna be what's so interesting about Black Friday and deals like this and stuff is like, I've we've gone out maybe a while ago on Black Friday and there's like nobody out. And so like now a lot of people order online, but on top of them ordering online, they I mean, every year is like a record spending year, even though the economy's in the
yeah,
shitter. Isn't that interesting? There's
yeah.
more people.
Supposedly.
I saw this thing the other day. You guys are gonna laugh. I saw this thing the other day where you can finance a Domino's pizza now. So you could pay for a pizza in 3 payments and get it delivered. We're at that point in the United States where you need to finance a pizza in three payment plans.
The
For a
ones that
$10 pizza.
yeah,
Whoa,
one
what's the
one
last time you ordered a pizza? They're not $10.
yeah.
Oh, I do. I mean, well, okay, not to be, we're advertising when we say that, but like Papa John's has a $9.99 carry out pizza near
Ah,
Oh, Papa
me.
John's. Yeah. I was talking
Yeah.
about Domino's.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it's like that's why I'm saying it. $10 because it's like what,
hey,
or even
I
$20.
we
It'd be
always
like
got
it'd be
we see these other podcasters that actually get endorsements. You know what I mean? And
yeah.
maybe this will travel to the internets and the interweb, and we'll have to start holding up some Domino's and Papa John packaging.
We'll just get a big neon sign and put it behind us that says Domino's. They'll think we're
Well,
streaming from Domino's. So
Oh my God. The one sad thing that I seen, it's like, I'm starting to not believe anything I see on the media, no matter where it comes anymore. But they basically said that this year was the very first year recorded where people still had money left over on credit cards from last year.
oh
But
wow,
but
carrying
but
over.
yeah, so I guess people are willing to spend extra money during the holiday season, but they usually get it paid down before they replicate it again every year during this time, right? But this was one time that the percentage of people, average people, still had not paid off what they had in debt, and so I'm like, wow. But like we all said, it's still a record. It's still a record. It's like every holiday is a record holiday.
Well,
Yeah.
because they said travel too. Again, this year it was a record. It's being right now is a record travel period, and it started. I think it was Tuesday, Tuesday
Yeah.
afternoon, and it's going to end Sunday night, if not Monday morning.
Is that a little bit of fear of loss? I don't know. It's like
Well, you ask yourself like who comes up with those numbers, right? Like they're
yeah,
like it's the
well,
biggest
everyone's
season.
traveling. Why aren't you? You know
There
what
it
I
is. There it is.
I would hate traveling right now. I feel sorry for people that have to. Like,
Oh my
Oh
God.
no, I
you
would. I
know,
will.
I watched
I've
Planes, Trains,
decided.
and Automobiles last night. Me and Hannah, one of the
Oh
best
yeah.
movies like ever made, and still to this day, it's like every single time I watch it and bad shit continues to happen to him, I'm like, oh, it's gonna get better, and it just never does.
No.
Never does.
But
This is one of those
there's
periods.
those moments. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Craig.
this is one of there's periods of time you were talking about that, Matt. Is like I would not travel unless it was well before or well after the event. In other words, Thanksgiving, no. Christmas, no. New Year's, especially no. If you're like you're going to Las Vegas or to New York at Times Square, oh man,
Yeah.
Better wear some diapers in New York.
I don't know
I've heard
how
that.
they do it. Yeah, they don't even have porta potties at Times Square.
And you're stuck in a crowd. Like, here's one of the interesting things, right? Like, I've seen certain videos and certain things that just freaked me out, right? So anytime there's a massive amount of people and they're all like stacked together, right? And I've been in those situations. I'm sure you guys have too. You always think to yourself, it just takes one event to happen and these people are gonna get squished and killed. Like we're way too close together. And it's
That's that
interesting because
fear, fight or flight. That's that thing in our
Oh
back of
yeah.
our mind where all of a
right.
sudden you get a bunch of people around you. The other thing that always gets me is being stuck in a traffic jam. I haven't been stuck in a traffic jam. I don't even remember the last time I was stuck in a traffic
Well, when
jam.
was the last time you lived here in Southern California?
Well, believe it or not, it had to be then, but it was
Right.
when we went to Abu Dhabi, and I always, if you go to a concert or a UFC fight where it packs the stadium, it's like it always makes you wonder. It's like everyone trickles in, but the fights end at the same time. So this craziness where everybody comes out and gets in their vehicle and just sits there and they're all like, nudging each other. And oh my God, I think it took us like 35 minutes to get to Abu Dhabi from Dubai. And it took us 3.5 hours to get home. And I'm like going, sitting with 5 rows of cars. I've always thought of that. It's like, where can you go? And we brought up the diaper thing. It's like, you know what I mean? It's like all
Right.
of a sudden it's like, I got to go to the bathroom and there's no bathrooms because there's not supposed to be a traffic jam in the middle of the desert.
Right. Well, it was like when we were in Baker and we were in that big traffic jam because
Oh my God.
we were
That
there
was
for
the
like
that
hours.
has to
Oh,
be the
that's
last
one of the
one.
worst spots going
Yeah.
between here and Vegas. Something happens on that road on I-15, you're done. You're
You're,
sitting in
you're,
traffic
you're
for.
hosed.
Yeah,
Oh
and the
yeah.
thing that happened was a tanker or one of those big semis that holds the explosive chemicals and shit blew up. And so even when we finally got off, right, it's still like
Oh
you
yeah.
look on the other side and you see the damage and you're like, yeah, I see why we've all been sitting here for
Wow.
3
Yeah.
hours.
And
Just
then
cleaning the
if it's
freeway
still
up
on
from that.
and if it's still
It
on fire,
was.
you feel the flame going right across the freeway, which I've unfortunately had that experience.
Crazy. Well,
Yeah, I'm glad I don't have to get on the freeway all
what
the
a way
time.
to start out our podcast. This is
I don't come in with a plan, so I
no,
just
well,
I'm
we didn't have a plan or a subject. It was like, and it's funny because it is sort of a segue of what I thought I wanted to talk about. Is my wife and I watched sort of a gangster kind of movie last night. It was called Fresh Kills, and a story about a couple of sisters that grew up in the mid '80s, with a father that was a mobster. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And they were in New Jersey and they upscaled themselves to Brooklyn. but what was hilarious about this whole movie, without giving it away, is that, the person that doesn't fit in, so one of the sisters just didn't fit in. And she's like, wow, everybody just acts like this stuff is okay, that you just have to put up with it. And she watched how her mom would totally medicate herself all the time. You know what I mean? Because she doesn't have any clue what her husband's doing or what he shouldn't be doing. And so, later on, and it's like this guy comes out of the audience, right? They're at a wedding and he just gets on one knee and proposes to her. And she's like, you can see her. She's like, the answer is no, I just don't. So her mom comes up and she says, of course she'll say yes. And then the next thing she's thinking in her mind, in little stuff, my wife and I were laughing because because they were showing these infomercials on, you could be a hairstylist. You could be, you could do hair. And she was just like, wow, is it just I'm going to accept the first proposal from any guy, and then I'm going to have kids and be a mom, and I'm just going to consistently just mind my own business. And she's like, what if I don't want that lifestyle? So I'm not giving it away, but it is pretty bizarre how I looked at her and I just went, man, a lot of people, whenever you're trying to think, well, I'm going to do something different, how fast the people around you that don't want you to leave that comfortable, complacent circle start, because, we've seen this with the present election, right? I really get that people just disagree with something they don't understand. If I don't understand it, I don't want to take the time to understand it. I just want to cause friction around people that think a certain way. And that usually doesn't go very good for the individual.
Well, you see
Well,
that with the Godfather movies. If you remember, if you
Yeah,
think about it, based on what you just shared, Robert, and
totally.
you don't think
Totally.
about that in the beginning. You just think about, okay, they're married to the mobsters, and
Yep.
that's fine, and then they get, I don't know, in a sense, they get their just desserts. But now, when you look back, based on what you just shared, it's like, oh yeah,
Or you grow up, like the one thing I say all the time is people keep asking me how many of my friends still live in Williston, North Dakota, where I grew up. And it's neat to see not only the certain family members that were there that stay there, but their children stay there too. You know what I mean? So it's pretty interesting that there's this one group of people in the world that just say, and maybe me, it's like I can't wait to get out of this place, no matter what it is. And then all of a sudden, there's this whole group of people that are just like, no, why do you have to buck the system? Why do you have to shake the boat? Why do you have to upset the wagon cart? All these little one-line sentences about, why can't you just be like fucking everybody else?
well, it's like the and I believe AI will really mess with this because the internet already kind of has. It's kind of like, okay, so say
Mhm.
back in the day, um, you were going to school and your teacher looked at you and said, you need to learn math. Why? Because it's not like you're going to be carrying a calculator around with you all the time.
Yeah,
It's interesting because even in our society right now, it's like idiocracy, right? It's like the less people are okay now knowing much less than they did years ago,
right.
and they're unwilling even to take the steps to take the time to learn because they're so enticed by social media or these other things. Like, I can't miss this next video, and yet I don't know, like, and it's another example is I don't like, my brother tried to teach me when I was first starting to drive how to do um what is it, non-automatic, what do they call it,
stick shift,
car stick shift. I mean, that's another word for it. Yeah, but
manual transmission.
manual transmission, right? So every single car now, most have automatic transmissions. And if you're in an EV, even more so the case.
Yeah.
But
No transmission.
That means that the whole next generation, and this is a joke that the boomers always say to millennials and below, it's like, oh, they'll never steal a manual car because they don't know how to drive it. You know what I mean? Like they don't know how to get it out of there because they've never driven a manual car before. And it's interesting because that's slowly but surely started to become more and more so the case with a lot of things. And before you know it, it's going to be practically everything.
Everything.
And it'll be really, really interesting to see what human knowledge looks like in the next 10 years when you can kind of farm it all out to somebody else.
Yeah, it like you just said, what are the things like me on a daily basis now? I'm constantly, because of you, Matt, interacting with AI just because my mind has a thought and I just want to know what that thought is. And it's
Yeah.
so funny that I have never been the individual that has ever looked at somebody and went, I need to ask them a question. I've always been this kind of person that I would like to ask the question to a person that I think knows the answer.
Hmm.
I do not, I have not ever given a shit about what the general public thought. And we sometimes look at our background and we go, where did that happen? And I think I've shared this with you guys before, not that I would wish this upon anybody, but from the time that I could understand people talking behind my back or hearing conversation, it's like that kid, where's that kid's parents? So from the time that I was trying to fit in, I never fit in because I didn't have my parents there. And it was really obvious. I can think about kids that are adopted, right? Because at one time in an adoptive foster home I was in, it was me and this guy named Mitch Cycle. Why will I never forget this guy's name? Because we're the only two white kids on an Indian reservation. And so it was obvious when I was walking around with the Ladus, and the father's name is Chum Ladue, native Indian. And it was obvious when we went anywhere that I was the white kid with a bunch of Indian kids, and I'm just like going, wow, if you grew up not being like everyone, is that like a propel? It allows you to be propelled into being unique and grabbing a hold of that uniqueness and not being like everyone else. It's like, so when I get around people and I see their lives and, I brought this up before. It's like I've changed how I think about people because I just know that everyone's on their own journey. And I don't know the journey of their journey before I met them. So if a person really doesn't want to be different like everyone, and everyone shows up and they got the job that they don't like, that doesn't pay them enough money, but this is just what it is, that saying, it is what it is. And it's like, I'm like, what a stupid fucking comment.
But Robert, isn't that kind of like you've shared this before with us, where, and we've even talked about it, where you are basically the sum of how you were growing up in the influences and the cultures that you've been raised with? Because that's what it kind of sounds like, where you had a lot of different influences growing up. You didn't have what your mother and father, I mean, if your mother and dad raised you,
Right.
how much different would you be today than you are now because of those cultural influences, because of the way that you were raised
Yeah.
by them? And in the early stages
can
of
go
growth,
back-
that happens.
I can go back and look at the people that I hung out with and they're still there. Doing the same thing. My wife and I were laughing because whenever the women were sort of doing whatever, right, they were always playing cards. And I always thought that this was a funny one. And I'm looking at your guys' feedback, I'm just like, so every time I went out of my way to go back home, everyone knew how to play cribbage. It was like as soon as everyone got done eating, it was like they broke into groups and they started playing cribbage. I don't know a fucking thing about cribbage. So instantaneously, I'm not part of the cliques because everyone plays cribbage. Well, these women were playing cards. You know what I mean? And they're betting pennies or whatever. And this one girl was winning, and she said, "You sure wouldn't win if grandma was still alive." She kicked everyone's ass. And I remember that, saying that's what all my relatives would say, is that my grandma would kick anybody's ass in cribbage. And I couldn't tell you the first thing about it, except that it's a board with some cards and people stick, some pegs in a hole. And I'm just like going, but like you said, Craig, it's like, what if you just mentally was around a group of people and you never inspired or had imagination of being something other than that group, that your whole goal was just to fit in. And that's really changed who I've been in the last couple of years, because I used to look at the income that I make and my lifestyle and the freedom that I have and the amount of joy that I have in my life and happiness. And I realized that it's self-chosen. It was a decision that I chose to make. And me just telling other people that they can be that way, and no.
Well, it's because that's not what they're familiar with. That's not what they
Right.
grew up with. And that's why I think it's a lot harder to make changes, especially after you've been around for how many years now? I mean, it's easier when you're a child because you can easily be molded into that situation. Again, I know I've brought it up before, but I think the Jesuits have said that up to the age of 7, your mind is moldable. So if you want to learn, that's what the whole point of
Got it.
learning things like that early on. Or even I think California here, they had a thing where it was called First Five, where they try to get you to get your new children up to the age of 5 reading, writing, arithmetic, singing, being more of, outgoing, so that they can take in that. Because after the age of 5, or in the case of the Jesuits, age 7, if I'm getting this wrong, the Jesuits that are watching, I'm sorry, but this is what I remember being told, that the influence is going to get a little harder, because now the mind of a child has been influenced. It's solidifying in its beliefs. And then, you move on from there. And this has been a big thing as to, I guess, when families influence their young to believe certain ways, whether you're here in the United States or whether you're in the Middle East or whether you're in Japan or whatever other culture you have grown up with. And then when you go outside of that, it is so different, because now, oh my gosh, wait a minute, this is not what I was taught. How do I wrap my head around this?
The people that are individuals, though, I got one quick story, Matt, and I want you to rattle. But, I love when they come out with someone that's so unique. So I guess there's a 6'4" new quarterback for Notre Dame, and Catholic Notre Dame, Catholic religion, right? And they just said this kid is just a natural talent, just so natural. But the biggest thing about him is everyone was saying now all the college rules have changed so he can get money for endorsements and stuff. And they're just saying, he's going to be the next Heisman Trophy winner. He's just like, everyone just says he's amazing. But everyone around him, including the players, that they just say he's the weirdest person in the world, because he's the opposite of the person that he portrays on the football field. They're like, you're on the football field, and there's something that snaps in this kid where he's just so competitive, and he'll run over everyone. And he leads by example. And then off the field, all these companies came to him to give him money for endorsements. And he says, the only way that I'll do an endorsement for your company is if you take the money you would give me and split it with the rest of the players on my team. And they went, okay. Most people take all the money for themselves. So then they were talking to his other team members, and they go, yeah, he's a total freak of nature. It's like, he goes, if he just said straight out, and you think about his parents raised him and how they raised him, right? And he just said straight out, he goes, can you imagine if I went on the football field all by myself with 11 other defensive players trying to take me out? That would not be a fun game to watch. But no, I have 10 other players that make me look good. And I'm going, fuck.
I think that's the difference between a leader and somebody that's individualistic, like like in our society, and we all deal with this, the individuality has gotten to such an extreme extent that even stuff that we've touched on in this conversation, it's like, well, you're better than your family, you're better than this, you're better than that, you can raise above it. All that is individuality. It's not that there's something wrong with it, because I believe you have to have some of that stuff, but you also really have to be careful with your ego. And one of those really, really interesting things too that I like to think about and touch on, what you guys were touching on a little bit earlier, is it's like the difference between tradition and indoctrination can be like so close,
Oh,
right?
man.
So feeling like you're part of a tradition that people have shared, it can feel in one way like very peaceful, but then for a whole nother group of someone else that has a different mind, different brain,
Yeah.
it's indoctrination. So if you go, hey, listen, I hate playing board games, and yet your family plays board games all the time, right? And they go, why won't you play board games? We all do it. It's a tradition, right?
Yeah.
But you as a person do not enjoy doing it, right? So for you, it's indoctrination. They're trying to force you to do something and be something that you're not. It's based off of a tradition. So you have to ask yourself, like, what do I want to keep as a tradition in my life, and what was I indoctrinated into believing and doing, right? And it's like, for some people, that is the ego and in individuality aspect of it. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
for them, their whole entire life is about being better than their family, and they like to bring it up as often as possible, right? They're not even the person that they're talking to doesn't know these people. They're not competing against these people in the community space, because none of these people fucking know any of these people,
Right.
right? They never met your dad, they never met your mom, they never met your cousin, that accomplished football all-star, something like that you're competing against. None of them know that. The only person that knows that is you, right? And
Very
you
good.
carry that shit with you. Like, so it's like that age-old saying, like, starve your ego, feed your soul. You have to figure out the parts of you that are you, and try to eliminate the aspects of you that are not. And people are going to bully you for that. They're going to be upset at you for that.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting. I went down this rabbit hole last night with Judaism, because there's this I believe it's pronounced Eruv. Maybe Craig knows about it. I'm going to
Go
look it
ahead,
up.
explain it. Explain it a little bit more. I'm not
I'm
quite
gonna
familiar with
pull
where
it
you're
up,
going.
because I don't want to
Okay.
Yeah.
misdo it. So an eruv is a symbolic enclosure that allows Jewish people to perform activities that are normally prohibited on Shabbat. For example, people can carry objects from private to semi-public spaces, or transport objects more than 4 cubits within a semi-public space. Under Jewish law, the entire area within an eruv is considered a single property. So they consider it a private area, not a public area. Therefore, they're allowed to do things on Shabbat that they wouldn't be able to do in a public area. Now, if you looked this up, there's one that surrounds Manhattan. There's one that surrounds a decent part of LA. So here's the interesting thing. In their own minds,
Right.
they've made the decision that if we put this wire up, and it's a wire on a post that goes from post to post, if we put this up, we're allowed to go do this and that on Shabbat.
Special dispensation.
Now, yes. And so now you look back in time, you go, when did they come up with that idea? Right? And a
Yep.
large aspect of it was the feminist movement, right? So women that were part, and you can go back thousands of years, it existed before that, but the large group of it came from when women went, I'm not allowed to take my kid in a stroller outside of my house and go for a walk on Shabbat.
Yeah, because you're not
because
supposed to do any kind of work.
And so
It's supposed to be the day of
men
rest.
go? They're like, listen, I want to chill and relax. And if you want to take the kid on a walk and the kid's crying, let's figure out a way to fix this where you can do that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
This
And
is
so
part
now
of
you have posts set up and you have all this stuff set up, right?
yeah.
So then mentally you're allowed. Now, is that a tradition or is that indoctrination?
That's to me
Depends on
that
who
could
you
be
are, right?
that's tradition and indoctrination.
Yeah.
It's both
So
because
Great
you in the
point, Matt.
tradition you were not supposed to do any kind of work. But then let's go ahead, and that's when I bring up the word special dispensation, is because, well, except for Thursday afternoon between the hours of 1:59 and 2:03 p.m., you can do this. And
but
it's like,
if you're taught your whole
no.
life that you couldn't,
Right.
unless if this was
Right.
the case and you believed it like in your soul, right?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
changes your perspective of who you are, right?
Well,
Yeah.
And there's a large amount of Jewish people that don't even know about the Eruv, don't even know that
I
they're
thought I've heard about it, but never
Mhm.
explained it
It's
like
like, do
the
you
way that
work
you
on
did.
Shabbat?
Yeah, knowing that
See?
now there are
It's
temples, and especially the
interesting.
one that I would go to, they would not. The whole idea is that you don't do anything from sundown Friday night because, according to the Bible, a day is counted as sundown to sundown.
So we're both in California, Craig. So you got 3 hours
Oh
now,
yeah, and
and then you're
many of
you're
the
done. You can't do anything else.
exactly. So
Yeah,
if I'm
but
doing Ask Me Anything
hey,
tomorrow, forget it. I'm done. I
yeah,
can't do it.
but here's what now with new knowledge, then Craig can create, four poles and put a string around them and
Yeah,
claim it as a e-rub, and he can do whatever he wants in that little square.
exactly.
Well, that's the
And
interesting thing
that's
about it.
yeah. It
And
just
that
doesn't.
permeates to everywhere's because all of us went to Thanksgiving, and I shared this story a while ago. But like we go to Thanksgiving and what do? You could have a large group of people that are of one belief. Everybody sits down. What do? Let's say grace. Let's pray before we eat, right? And
Right.
then you could have another group of people that don't do that, or you could have half and half or whatever it may be. And I was saying I felt like an outsider in my own family, in my extended family, not my close family, but in my extended family, because they do that. And I don't believe in prayer myself. That's not something I follow
Great point.
personally. I don't mind people that do it. But here we go. Guess what I did when we were there? The tradition, which was to bow my head and pray, even though
Mhm.
I didn't believe that it was working or doing anything for me. You know what I mean?
You're
But I'm
But
probably
did you
like,
do that out of respect?
yeah, respect is the
yes.
first thought that came to my mind. We
Yeah.
do things sometimes respectfully, not to say I don't know, I don't believe what you do, but I'll respectfully
But
do
you gotta,
that.
but you gotta ask
Right.
yourself this, right? Because after, and this is another story that I brought up after, I was subtly questioned by my uncle and my cousins for why I didn't believe. So that's not respectful,
No.
right?
No,
So I can
no.
respect prayer and I can respect them, but they're not going to respect me and my own personal thoughts. And that's an
Matt,
interesting duality, you
Oh
know?
yeah. Go
Matt,
to
I
a
know you
church
know
and
this. I know you know this. But one of your mother's biggest regrets, if you asked your mom if she had any regrets, it was when we had you.
Don't
That's it.
stop there. Keep going.
Yeah,
No, I'm just
yeah.
kidding.
But
uh-oh.
all of a sudden, her mom and her sister had this thing that we don't know where it comes from. But the whole family gets together Christmas morning and has breakfast together. Now I'm talking getting in your vehicle with your pajamas still on and driving in very, very cold weather to go to another person's house. And so it was bizarre for me because I've never heard of it. And I'm going like, okay, so we're taking our sons. They get up on Christmas morning to open their presents, which is another tradition, right? Because some people get to open them up at night or the next day or
Yeah,
whatever.
Hannah's family did it at 12 at night, on
Yeah.
Christmas Eve.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so right after Matt and Kyle got to open their presents, we got to jump in the car and they had to leave their presents so we could go to another house and watch those kids play with their toys.
And what's so interesting about that is we would have to do that aspect of it. And then we would go home, freshen up. We get to play with whatever we got for Christmas, and then we get all of our shit back on and go back over there for dinner. And it was similar. So as a kid, you're going, this is the dumbest tradition of my life, right?
Yeah.
Like I have a Nintendo 64 sitting over here that I can play and I can't play it. I have to wait. And it's like there's certain aspects of
So
it
we
that
so we ruined Christmas for Matt and Kyle.
no.
But that's the
it was
tradition that we were
tradition.
talking about.
Right.
Yeah. How
And
far do
people
you
got
want to
upset if you
go
didn't
before we
show
want to
up.
change that?
And what's so interesting is when you stopped showing up and you and mom made the decision, you're like, we're not gonna do that tradition anymore, right?
Fuck that.
Um, all of a sudden people are upset at you for year one, maybe year two, and then they just forget and they're like,
Yeah,
I don't care.
this is something that we used to do, and I don't know why we made such a big deal out of it. And me and Terry were even talking about, I said, "Is that something your parents did?" And she said, "No." So that means that the idea either originated with her sister's family or it was passed on from her brother-in-law's family and drug into here. And so now all of a sudden, hey, if what you know that you know that you know isn't so, when would you like to know?
Well, I
Is
also want to say that it's funny too because there's a duality to everything too because they made one hell of a great Christmas breakfast. My uncle did.
yeah.
So it wasn't like I don't want to sit here and be like it was the most awful thing ever because you got like a great Christmas breakfast. But my mom also made an amazing Christmas breakfast. So I don't.
Yeah, and the other thing that they did is when you see that's the perfect thing what Matt is doing right now for everybody that's watching is can you create the things that you thought were bad into good memories? All right. So the one thing that I always remembered is, Trent, Travis, and Tori, Matt's cousins, right? They never came over here to open up their present under the tree. But Matt and Kyle got to go there, and there was always presents there from grandma and the other side of the family for them under that tree, and they got to open up presents there as well. But the Bell Boys never came over here to open up a present.
Well, they're older, like I think it's interesting too because like Christmas, the older you get, the more you realize like Christmas is for kids. It's like
Yeah.
an amazing thing if you have children because it's like you get to experience everything through them. And so like I totally can see, you grow older and what does Christmas Eve become for you as an adult? This is a great day to get drunk. Great day to drink. Christmas Eve. Let's get the eggnog out. Let's get
Everybody's
the
allowed to
drinks
drink
out.
here. It's like,
Yeah.
and then
It becomes something
then
different.
then I hear about Jews. Everyone's always mad at the Jews, and
That's a song from Tom Lehrer, by the
yeah,
way.
and guess what? You get to open up presents for 7 days.
Exactly. Well, 8 days.
Right.
It's 8 days. But that's the misnomer that everybody thinks about, that you get one present or two, mostly one, each and every day of Hanukkah or night, as the case is. But it's, and after a while, it's like, again, and in my opinion, it's the commercialization because Hanukkah happens around the same time as Christmas. Now,
the mensch
this
on
year,
the bench. The mensch on the bench. There's not
exactly. Elf on the Shelf. Yeah. So same thing. It's like, okay, let's see how can we get more of these Elf on the Shelves sold? Bench on a bench. Got it. But yeah,
hey, what do they have? What do they have for atheists? What do they? It's not a shelf or a bench. What do they?
Elf on a Shelf because that's not part of the Bible either.
Yeah, that's okay.
Good
Benches
point.
actually exist.
Yeah, yes, they do. By the way, for anybody who wants to know, Hanukkah this year is Christmas night. It starts Christmas night.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's a locked-in day. They don't move it like the last Thursday of every.
It's not a locked-in day.
Oh man.
Okay, just a real quick history about that.
Please.
Is that the Hanukkah, the reason why Hanukkah is sometimes around Thanksgiving time or as late as it is this year is because the Jewish calendar is based on the lunar month, meaning 28 days. And in order to offset it, similar to the same way that we have the leap day every 4 years, the Jewish calendar resets itself There is actually a calculation, and so
I'm
it
sure
adds an
there is.
extra month into the calendar that is again based on the new moon. So 13 moons in a year, and they just add an extra month according to the calendar. So that is the reason why you have things pushed back. Like this year, it starts Christmas night. Not the day, not Christmas Eve night, but Christmas night. And it will go into January. Next year, based on the way the calendar is set up, Hanukkah will be around December 15th, the first night being the 14th of December. And then it's going to back up a little bit. So it's just one of those weird things.
How the hell do you plan holidays?
You don't. You just take it for granted. And yes, as Peter is pointing out, Easter for Christmas is set by for Christians, is set by the new moon. It's the first new moon after the spring equinox on a Sunday.
A lot of this stuff comes from like, and this is blasphemy, but pagan holidays, right?
Oh, I'm sure it is. Yeah.
I was just asking GPT because there's that age-old thing, right? I'm sitting here listening to Christmas music. I love the season of Christmas.
Oh, I love it too.
So I'm sitting here listening to Christmas music, and it's like, oh, holy night, the night that Christ was born, right? And then you go research it in any way, and it's like the Bible talks about flocks and all these things, and it's like, well, that would only to go see Jesus, and it's like, well, that would only exist in spring. So wait a minute.
Yeah.
He maybe
and the other thing too,
and then you look back and it's like, also it was early Christians didn't even count it as his birthday. It was more about the resurrection than anything. And it's like, well, but that's Easter though, right?
Well, that's what we understand as being Easter. Yeah.
Right.
Then we got the funny thing that we all can talk about, which is a whisper down the lane. You know what I mean? It's
there we go.
Right.
So now everyone starts changing it to the way they think or they heard or they thought. And it's like, I just don't know why we don't get along. I really don't know why we don't get along. It's like, well, because people keep making up shit. That's why.
It's cool. I think it would be fun if people just found it like interesting what other people experience and how they do things instead of wanting them to experience life the same way as them.
You mean having an open mind?
Well, it's difficult in today's day and age, but yeah. Because I have no problem with
your path is not everyone's path.
Well, my brain goes to all different kinds of stuff. So last night it's 12 a.m. I'm researching ERUVs for some reason, right? Because this is how my brain works.
What were you researching?
ERUV, the stuff that I was talking about earlier. And my mind starts calculating. It goes, it's a wire. So if somebody climbed up and cut the wire without the people in the surrounding area knowing, does God give them a free pass on that one? Or is it because they didn't know? Or is it like one of those situations? And that's why, like, if you wanted to know why I'm agnostic, that's why, because my brain works that way.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, okay, so then does the guy that cut the wire, is it his fault? Because if you look at the websites, you can look this up, like Manhattan, ERUV, Los Angeles one.
There's one in London, according to Peter. Yeah.
Right. They have something on the website, you guys, saying that it's up and they check it and they maintain it consistently for that exact reason, to make sure that there's not a cut somewhere that someone did in the night or something like that, that no longer makes it valid, right? And you're like,
this magical spell over this specific area.
Yeah. And
I agree, Matt. Yeah.
It's interesting. And that's the thing is, like, there might be some people watching this and are like, that's a little wacky. Like, I don't understand why you have to take it that far, right? And I'm like, I just find it fascinating. Like, I research it. I'm not going to go, hey, why does that exist? Or be like, you shouldn't be able to do that. Like, why do I care?
Why do you believe like that?
What works for them, as long as it doesn't affect me, right? So
I think that's the bottom line is, you believe what you want. I believe what I want. And as long as we can respect each other's views, why not live together? I don't have to be.
Yeah.
Why do I have to have somebody cram their belief down my throat?
Yeah.
You want to talk about turning me in an opposite direction? That's it right there.
Well, it's like how many people didn't go to Thanksgiving dinner because of their political opposition to one another this year.
That was a topic of discussion.
Right. Yeah. I heard yesterday that there's gender revealing parties. Do you know that now there's a party for freezing your eggs? And I grew up understanding the 30-30-30 because I had good mentors, right? 30% believe one way, 30% believe another way, 30% believe another way. And I'm going like, there's a large personality trait that are, amberable personalities that thinking about freezing their eggs is never going to happen. And the reason that a lot of us are here is because, one of our parents actually drank too much.
Yeah. Or they didn't know
Yeah,
how to put on the condom correctly.
but yet there's people that are not only logical enough in their brains not to get pregnant, but even freezing their eggs when some of them have made a decision that they're just not going to have sex anymore.
Which is now becoming a big thing too because of everything that's going on in the country.
Like, man, and I'm laughing with them. I'm not laughing at them. I sit there and I try to think, wow, you put up a lot of rules. I think you guys have heard this one where, a lot of women out there, and I'm throwing women under the bus, but it's like in a perfect world, I'd like a guy that makes like $250,000 a year. I'd like him to be over 6 foot. You know what I mean? And I'd like him to be a little bit intelligent. And a guy like, Elon Musk goes on his, Gronk or whatever AI, and they go, well, okay, that's like 1.2% of the men on the planet.
Well, that's the thing too, is like you start to ask yourself, like, where did these standards come from? And that goes back to the
Oh my
tradition or
God.
indoctrination thing. If you're surrounded by people that say this is what you deserve, and what you deserve is unaccomplishable,
That's
right?
crazy.
Then you're gonna have a lot of frustrated people, and that's what we got. So it's
Well,
Well, because
like,
guys,
that's
that's why I think the guys are so funny. You know what I mean? They were interviewing these. I watched another thing on a podcast, and this guy was actually saying that they've done this statistic, right? And so guys for great purposes, right, are usually motivated by helping a person. Like they say that men really, really are not selfish individuals by nature. It's like if you really find guys, they're like, as long as the people that I love are happy, I really don't need anything. And it was based off them interviewing like hundreds of thousands of men of what they wanted for Christmas. And they said, I like a phone call from the people that I love. What else? It's just important for me to know that they're happy. So there comes the list, what
yep.
Matt, what would you like for Christmas? And if you're hearing nothing, and this was always the funny thing when I was in telecommunications, that everyone knows the day that there's the most long distance calls. Again, that's a non-existent thing. For some of you guys, you're going to have to Google what's long distance. But the number one long distance day for people calling their parents is Mother's Day. There was never a bigger day for long distance calling than Mother's Day. Guess what day was number one for the most collect calls? Father's Day.
by the
So
way, guys, collect call is they pay instead of you pay. That's what
yeah,
that means.
Yeah.
so people would reach out to their mothers on their dime, but they reach out to dad on dad's dime.
Yeah. Well, that's what dad would want.
And yeah, because that's what dads want. Isn't
Right.
that crazy? So when you're thinking about, men in general just want to be patted on the back for being the person that's doing their best and trying to make someone happy. And so it's very interesting sometimes when, you always get it all the time where people go, what do you want for Christmas? You know what I mean? And it really makes you push yourself because, another thing I wanted to bring up with you guys is, I always talk about the magic lamp, right? You know what I mean?
Right.
And you just have to put a thought in your mind. Listen closely, you guys. You just need to put a thought in your mind and just imagine a little bit. Because when I first wanted to talk about this, what are the three wishes? then you put the boundaries around them, right? Well, first of all, you can't wish for more wishes. You can't wish harm on anyone. And you can't go against somebody else's free will. So you can't wish that an individual would fall in love with you, right? Because you can't take away another person's free will. Well, when I first heard about the genie and three wishes years ago, they didn't have those three. And I'm like thinking, who put those three out there?
It's
Right?
probably
So
Disney.
someone knew that, oh my God, these are the wishes that people pray for. So we got to say that, and it's the same thing that I seen a poster, I mean, a meme, and you guys will laugh at this, but it showed three guys sitting around a fire. And one guy was cooking, cavemen. One guy was cooking. Another guy was warming his hands. And the other guy said, this is really dangerous. We got to figure out how not to let people use this to hurt somebody else. And the other two are like, what the fuck is wrong with you? And I thought, wow, that's the world we live in. One person's just enjoying it, another person's utilizing it, and another person's trying to regulate it.
Like today.
And I'm going like, wow. So I wanted to say this to you guys, that when I really thought about that, I thought, what would be the three wishes for me? And every one of you have different wishes, right? But the more I thought about the wishes and really dug in deep, I'd like you to ask yourself what your three wishes are, right? And then I'm going to tell you mine, but as I tell you mine, you shouldn't change yours, or maybe you will. But I thought the number one thing I would pray for first is wisdom. The second thing I would pray for is love. And the third thing I'd pray for is health. So those might be different than your three wishes, and they're definitely different than my first three wishes before I took the time to actually fucking think about it. Not come out with just a thing that somebody else says.
It's like step one, I want to have invisibility. Step two, I want to be able to fly.
Yeah. And so it's interesting. It's very, very interesting that.
Well, it's like the lottery, right? Like every time the lottery hits a certain number, people start to dream again.
Yeah.
About what their lives could be like or what they could do. And we all fall prey to that. And that's why it works so well.
Yeah.
And that's why like get rich quick schemes work, because they start to get you to envision a version of your life that you hadn't in a long time, right?
Yeah.
And so then you start to like connect with that.
This is a little promo. I'm going to talk a little bit about the lottery, Matt. I actually asked questions of the lottery on AI for tomorrow's AMA because because one of the things that you just said, that I went in there, how many countries have a lottery? And it actually did it by continents. It was like everywhere has lotteries. And I thought, wow, that might be something that's just toward the United States. But the other thing I thought of is, why can't people think that way about trading? Because I'll talk about this tomorrow more on the AMA, but it's like everyone plays the lottery when it gets to a certain height. And it's like, man, the imagination on, okay, after taxes in the United States, it's only 480 million. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's something that crazy off a billion, right? That your imagination really kicks into high gear. And your odds. And yet when you lose, we all want to know who the winner was. And then we're saying, I'm not going to do that anymore until the next time the lottery gets that high again.
Well, listen, like you can ask yourself a million times what gets people to do things, and it's clear as day when like you look, right? Like it's very interesting that
Black
you can
Friday.
move somebody.
Wait a minute, I
into
gotta go
action.
because I can get
Right.
a deal. I'm sorry, Matt. I didn't mean to.
No problem. I was gonna say, like, you can give somebody an opportunity to dream about these things, and I think that's what moves like ordinary people into that next phase, right? And not that anyone's like ordinary, but like, because like, what the fuck does that even mean? But like, I truthfully think that and this is for myself as well. If you don't spend the time to like think of what you actually want to do while you're here, or what you want to be up to, um, what's going to motivate you to like do those things? You know what I mean? Like, because I've had times in my life, and I'm sure all of you have, where I wasn't in that space, and then when I was in that space, and man, it just seems like things click so much faster when I am in that space.
Oh, me, big
Now
time.
that could be my awareness or it could be my action, right? But I also think that it's honestly, and I'm not like one of those people that says, oh, okay, you can like manifest things, because I don't know if I fully believe in that. But there is the aspects of like, sorry, my dog is trying to attack me right now. But there are aspects of it where you really, really have to go, man, if I don't perceive or see something past tomorrow that I want to accomplish or do, right? Where's the growth, right?
Where's
Like,
the hope?
well, that's even more so the case. Yeah, where's the hope in it, right? So like when you see things long term and you don't have that hope or that desire, it starts to really make you more present in just about the worst way possible. As where I
Yeah.
think, when you have a dream and a goal, right? Now every single thing that you're doing slowly but surely starts to adapt around that, because you can't not think about it. So now it's like, oh, before, I always slept in, I never got up early. And it's like now that you're motivated, all of a sudden you're waking up at the same time and you're getting up early. And these routines start to exist. And it's like, did that come from me, or did it come from that desire to be something better? It's such an interesting question, what
Yeah.
motivates people. Because, like, obviously it's different for everyone. But I truthfully think, like you were saying with the lottery, Dad, it's like that envisioning of it. Why would you go all the way to the gas station to get a ticket? Get in your car, go all the way there. Because the dream was strong enough to pull you out of your
Yes.
house to do that. And yet there's so many things that are not that way, right? So how do you get yourself in that space, and how do you stay in that space? Because you're almost unstoppable sometimes when you're there. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what Abraham Hicks talks about a lot, is
right,
that being in that zone, being in that vortex, to realize that there's something else that you can accept. And when you're not in the vortex, or when you're fighting against whatever that is, when your imagination is stifled, then what do? You sit there and you wallow in whatever it is that you've got, and your imagination is not there to engage you into a more positive attitude, a positive sense, because you're
Right.
always surrounding yourself with the negative. And isn't the law of
right,
attraction the whole idea of what you think about, you get? Whether it's positive or negative, the universe does not say, or does not discriminate between the former or the latter. It is because of what you think about. So if you're
Yeah.
thinking always negative, what's going to happen? All you're going to get is negative. And if you're thinking positive, then all you're going to get is positive. Now, yes, there are variations, and you have to learn to identify one over the other and where you want to go within that. Otherwise, it's like okay, she likes to bring up, at the top of a hill and you're outside your car, if you step in front of your car and because the brake is off and it's in neutral and it starts rolling down the hill, it's easier to catch when you're right there at the top of the hill next to it, as opposed to being at the bottom of the hill and looking at this oncoming beast that's traveling at 70, 80, 90 miles an hour that you can't stop.
well, it's
Right.
that illusion too that like you are always at the bottom of the hill that keeps people stuck there, right? It's like
Oh,
that
gosh,
illusion,
yes.
that there's, like you said, Dad, there's no hope. So like you don't really realistically ever believe that it's possible for you to start on the other end, even
Right.
though people have done it and people
Mhm.
have succeeded at it, in worse and more dire mental and physical circumstances. And it just comes from that place of like everybody's different. You got to figure out what that is to
Right.
keep the,
The,
push the boulder
the
up the hill, whatever you want to,
the
an analogy
best
you want to use.
Yeah, the best analogy that I love is when I heard that you're just not tuned in. So you're not on the right frequency and you're not tuned into the right place. Because like when you said, you don't know what your beliefs are as far as manifestation, the
Yeah.
very first thing, because you and I know each other so well, I would very simply say that I would guess, this would be my hallucination, is that your description and your labeling a manifestation is why you don't believe.
Yeah,
Because
I guess it's like it is the outside perspective because it's
yeah,
like, well, it's like the manifestation of the secret or whatever it may be. It's like if I dream and believe so much that I'm gonna get a bicycle, that somehow a bicycle is gonna show up at my front door. I don't believe that happens. And
no.
so it's like that's what messes with it a little bit because I'm in my own mind, I always ask myself, similarly with the religious stuff I talked about earlier, is this like, is it my mental state of action that causes the cause and effect? It's not the manifestation like the universe brings it to me. It's just the fact that I'm now in action that brings those
Right.
things
Because
more to the forefront.
if someone's seeing your background as you're looking this and you see you walking up on that television screen, your background.
Oh yeah.
I know that there's probably less than 1% of people on the planet that them seeing you and seeing the snow falling and the fireplace, they would not have the creativity or the imagination to understand or want to know how you created that. All
Yeah.
right. But yet you plug into your creative state. And because you plug into your creative state, that would be, instead of saying manifestation, for me, Matt, that would be your frequency. See, your frequency has the imagination of seeing somebody do stuff like your father. I see people do things, and my mind goes, I need to figure out how to make that happen.
Well, it's interesting too, because if you're an
Yeah,
outsider, you can it's so much getting in the flow and like there's a large amount of trial and error and trust, like non-fear of failure that has to do with it. And I think that that also is part of that action aspect of it.
totally.
Because there's
Totally.
situations that have happened in my own life, and I'm sure you guys can relate, where you like go out of your way to learn something new. Maybe it's guitar, maybe it's whatever. And then you hit that Dunning-Kruger effect. You go into it excited, ambitious, going, I'm gonna be the next, Van Halen, Eddie Van Halen, or whoever, right? And the moment your fingers start to hurt, you realize that that is not going to happen anytime soon, and
Yeah,
now you have to accept the fact if you have the action or the desire enough to follow past the pain and the energy that it'll take to get good at it.
yeah.
And I think that that honestly does have to come from a place of personal ambition. Like you said, the creativity stuff in me has always been there. And my lack of, like, the more that I lean into the numbers, calculation, analytical side of my mind, the more I tend to struggle because I think in my own
Wow.
mind, as I've
You
grown
know that's
older,
where I excel.
right, right. Well, that's
Yeah.
the thing is you have to ask yourself, sit down and go, why would I perceive the world that way and want to be that way? Well, because of my admiration for, right? And then as you get older, you're either going to keep that admiration and feel like uneasy because it doesn't fit, the puzzle piece doesn't fit, right? Or you're going to go, man, I can really admire you for being able to be that way. But it just, that puzzle piece doesn't fit in me. I
Yeah.
feel way more excitement, happiness putting this stuff together. I mean, that's one of the interesting things about it. And you got to kind of figure out what it is for you, right? So
Yeah,
I could do numbers, but they have to be creative.
yeah,
Yeah.
like
You got to trick yourself into it, is what I'm saying.
I'm only competitive with myself. I remember way back when that, it's always been to me where, listen, if I'm in the top five, everybody knows who the hell I am. It was never this thing that I needed to be number one. And so then I always thought that I know that I can get Kaizen, I can get better, I can get 1% better, I can be better than the person I am. And as I dive more into my success that I have now, it's still my me wanting to inspire someone to imagine a better life for them and there's somebody else, them and
Yeah,
the
you got
people.
to get them in that state that we're talking
And
about,
and
right?
so and so when people see me do what I do, they incorporate and they make up their own imagination of how I'm able to attract so many people and how fast I attract them, when they don't realize that all I'm doing is inspiring them to imagine. So people look at me still to this day and they go, I just could never get on camera and sell shit. If you knew who I was, that's the furthest thing that I look at myself
Well,
as.
it's not even your perception.
Yeah,
It's theirs, right?
I'm not interested in anybody buying anything that I have to offer
Well, it's
because
like one of those interesting things, Dad. Sorry to interrupt you, but it's like
no, no,
you have to ask yourself certain questions when you like look at certain things. It's like, did Steve Jobs need to wake up every single day and go, I'm just getting 1% better, just getting 1% better today? I don't think he thought about that shit. I think he
no,
was so motivated that he didn't need that. And that's
yeah,
the question that I'm pulling up is if you need all of those things to motivate yourself, maybe you're just not in the right spot. Maybe you need
right,
to think more. Maybe you need to feel more about what that is. Because it should be, not to say it should be effortless because it's not, but at the same
no,
time,
Well, that
it's
goes
such a
back to
weird
what we,
question,
that
you know?
that goes
yeah.
back to what we were talking about in the beginning here of this
Like, does
podcast about
Elon Musk need to think about getting 1% better every single day to do what
yeah.
he's doing? That's a good
Yeah.
question.
But
I think
we're
Kelly,
talking about in the beginning of, how we think and why we think what we think and where does that come from? Whatever the cultural background is that we were raised with. I mean, how many of us, even when we do some of the individual things, there are people who we feel that, yes, we say the same things over and over and over and over again to them, but they still don't get it. Yet, why do other people get it? Because their mind is a little bit more open. And yes, you do
Right.
say our minds need to be open in order for the parachute needs to be open in order for it to work. So why not have our minds be that way in order for them to work? But the cultural and the background and the baggage that we have carried with us over the years stops us from doing that. And it's,
yeah.
in some cases, it's harder and harder to open that up and let that out and dump it out, and get rid of it. Oh, wait a minute. No. I got to keep this item. How many of us are hoarders? How many of us have boxes that we have in our attic that we have not opened for 5, 6, 7, 18, 20 years?
I can't get rid of that.
Guilty.
Well, it's like
I
here's
can't
an
get rid of
interesting
that.
thought, and I think this is good fitting for you, Dad. This is a question for you, I guess. But it's interesting because when someone shows up and they ask for the analytical aspects of things, they're not coming at them from a creative perspective, even
No,
analytically. I think
no,
Elon Musk or these people are still incredibly creative, even though they're analytical people. You
yeah.
included. It's just the way that it's perceived. So when you talk to somebody, what's the first thing that they normally do? There's two different kinds of people. They go, okay, I want to be this. They dream and then they go do it. And then you have the other person. They go, how many people am I supposed to talk to? How many messages am I? They go to the analytical side. There's no
Yeah.
creative aspect to it. And for you, it's a question that's unanswerable, just like it's a question that's unanswerable for Stephen King, how he writes so many books.
Yep.
You could ask him a million times and he's going to say the same thing. I love to write and I sit down and make sure that I write. And it's
Yeah.
like, I like to do that. And for you, it's like you like to communicate and inspire people.
Some
So it's
some
an
of the
effortless creative thing. So,
we as human beings just I don't know where the complexity comes from, but it's part of the human DNA. But that's why people that say the simplest shit, like Yoda, that's why people don't get it because it's not logical. So
mm,
I don't remember the person that was asked this question, but there was a person that climbed Mount Everest. And after he did it and came down, they stuck a microphone in his face and said, "Why did you do that?" And he said, "Because it was there." See, that's not a satisfactory answer for the majority of the
no.
people.
It would be
because
bragging rights.
because
There's a
that
reason
makes
that there's a whole line leading up the mountain now of people that have paid for a Sherpa to basically carry them up the mountain so they can say they did it. Right? It's bragging rights on social media and shit. And you ask that person, it's like, yeah, I guarantee you he did it under much worse odds
Oh
too.
my God, he
And
was
you
Oh,
he was one
yes.
of the very first. It was
so
When
you
you're a
look at people
pioneer,
like that and you're like,
it is tough at the very
yeah,
right.
beginning because you think about like when the Wright brothers flew the plane. How hard was it for them to get the balance of the plane, the wing distance, the amount of speed, the wind resistance in order to get that thing up in the air? And how long did it last? Maybe a football field.
They
yeah,
probably thought about it like Leonardo da Vinci thought about inventing things, where it's like they came at it from a creative aspect and used math and analytics to get there, but it was a creative thought that they could fly. And I think
yeah.
that's the
And
interesting thing. It's
and if
like,
it
are you
doesn't
not
excite
thinking
you,
creatively?
if it
Yeah.
doesn't excite you, if it doesn't get you, into the frequency, there we go. If it doesn't get you into the frequency that you enjoy doing the journey, then you just won't do the journey, because what you're actually doing is you're doing it because of things that you think that you want, right? So it's like, well, who doesn't want more money, and who doesn't want more free time, and who doesn't want to impact a lot of people? Oh my God, a majority of people.
Well, I think if you asked them deep down, they would say yes, but they don't know where that aspect is for them.
No. So what they do is they do, Matt, what you said. They immediately focus at the obstacles. It's like,
It's
yes,
what hurdles do I have to
I
jump
would,
over?
because the imagination is what gets your ass in the seat. Because most people, when they get lottery tickets, might have got lottery tickets when the weather wasn't prime. You know what I'm saying? That if you
Yeah.
live in a northern state or a southern state, it's like, I don't want to get out because it's 140 degrees outside. If you lived in Phoenix, but then it's like it could be 31 below or 40 below, living here. But
Yeah.
it's like people constantly do stuff, and it's all, in my opinion, their frequency to be plugged in because it makes them feel alive. I know that what I do, at age of 62, I'm still defining the things that I want to do the most that keeps me in that place of joy and excitement in the right frequency. And this even brought up a point that I think that both of you guys would like, is not only are we talking a little bit about just the way we think, tradition, and why things are the way they are, is our availability just to accept an opinion from somebody that life is better for them because of this wired in section.
Right.
And to celebrate the fact that they can do that, not just because it's outside your realm.
Yeah, I seen, the look on your face, Craig, as Matt was explaining this. And it's like it being your tradition from your belief, and you're like, wait a minute, is this something that I can apply to my life?
If I choose to, and that's the
Right.
thing, because that is more my understanding, part of the Orthodox and Hasidic, sects of Judaism. I don't think that that's a case in conservative, although there may be some conservative believers who have that or who are familiar with that. It's not something that I am, and I was raised conservative, but yet the Reform people of the Reform style of Judaism, they probably go, huh?
Yeah.
What is that?
Yeah,
I've never heard of that before.
And again, like a lot of people that have beliefs in life, it's like that has always been the hypocrisy behind organized religion.
Yes.
That people get to look from the outside in and go, wait a minute, you guys put these things together of the way that you're supposed to live your life. But we find out that the people that are at the top of the pyramid are doing those things.
Yeah.
It's like, wait a minute, you're not allowed to have more than one person that you have sex with unless you're the leader of that belief.
Yeah, and how many people get influenced by that, because we see that happen. There are a couple of religions that their foundation used to be, how many wives could they have?
Yeah. Oh my God.
It's not used to be. There's still a large amount of the world.
There
still is. Yeah. But I mean, there, like I know one religion in particular, and I'm not going to name any names, where it's still part of the religion, but it's not as acceptable as it used to be,
right,
to have more than one wife, and especially in our society.
I heard there was a religion in the Middle East that just lowered the age of women to be able to get married.
Not surprised, depending on how fundamental that religion is, or at least
like
how much they say fundamental is.
You're using the wrong word, Dad. It's not the word women is not the right word to use. The word is child. Yeah.
Well, at that point, yes.
Right. Because I think that's one of those interesting conversations. Like I
Well, even
remember when I
Well,
someone,
was
and what do
12,
you
you know.
think is a child versus a man? Because, okay, if I'm going to look at the
oh my
Jewish
God.
religion, okay, when you're bar mitzvah, which is typically age 13, which is typically around the puberty time when the changes start to occur. And of course, this also was with a woman, but traditionally with the man. You were not allowed to be counted as part of what they call a minyan, or as part of the people who could be there to start a service, a religious service in the community, because you are not of age. And then once you are bar
Wow.
mitzvah, and you now are considered a man in the Jewish religion. Now, whether or not you are mentally capable to handle all of the events of puberty and beyond at that point, but there is so much that goes on when it comes to this kind of stuff. I mean, you could say that yes, when puberty hits, whether you're a man or a woman, that that's it. You are now a man or a woman. And
Yeah.
therefore, now, according to some of the older religions, some of the fundamentalist religions that we find, like in the Middle East, now you are able to be married off. In Game of Thrones, if I may
Yeah.
bring that up, there was a situation where, as soon as Sansa was her flower came into bloom,
Right.
as they said it, now she could be married and she could have children, and therefore she was a woman, even though mentally she was not ready for what was about to come.
And then you can be traded by your father. You know what I mean? Or,
Right.
Well,
Or
oh my
traded like cattle
God.
to somebody else.
well, marriage used to not be about love, you know what I mean?
Right.
It's not the way that it exists, right? It was like a trade
Yeah.
between families. So
Just so that
it's
the
interesting,
families could
but
stay together,
goes
or
back
to
to when did
hold
we get
on to land or territory
right?
or a kingdom, so that maybe instead of them fighting each other now, because, this house married that house, the Spanish house married the English house. Okay, now England and Spain have a reason not to fight each other.
Right.
Well, it's interesting too because you have to ask yourself, same question I asked earlier, is it's like at what point did that move from tradition to indoctrination? Like what king or queen went,
Yeah.
that's indoctrination. I'm not doing that anymore. I don't care if you say it is tradition. That's not right. Right? And it's interesting because you can find that shit like everywhere.
Everywhere.
It's like the
Everywhere.
ham cutting off the hams story, right? Is
Yeah.
it's like it is can be told in that simple of terms, but you have to ask yourself, especially through the holidays, like what is tradition and what is indoctrination? Like what am I doing that's like just not me or I'm not okay with, but I'm doing it anyway because it's tradition. Like we have to do it to
The,
appease
the
people.
first person that brought in the plastic Christmas tree. It's like,
Yeah, right. No. It's like we're all gonna watch Christmas Vacation, and what does he say? He's like, "I'm not getting one of those. We're going out and we're chopping one down ourselves." I'm not. I'm his
That's right.
tradition wasn't even buying a real tree at a place. His tradition was we're going out and we're chopping one down ourselves, right?
Regardless
oh
of the
my
size, and
And
God.
his
it's going
kids
to
were
fit
like,
in our house, damn it.
"Yeah." And you could see his kids in the movie, and you know for a fact they're plastic tree lovers now.
Well,
So
isn't that, Matt, because you and Craig come from the artistic side of
we
the,
all do.
yeah,
It's part of
the
human nature
frequency
to be
stuff.
artistic.
I am always admired a person's ability to make fun of the shit that people believe in. I always just thought these people that get into this mind where they write a script and what's the Home for the Holidays? Is that the one that mom likes?
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. And with Robert Downey Jr. in it and stuff, we watched it yesterday.
Oh, did you?
Just sits there and just laughs her ass after the whole thing. And I just love the even part where, his father, I forgot this part, but Robert Downey Jr., his sister, that's the prep one, is all mad at him because you embarrassed us because you and your husband got married on the beach. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
everyone in our little town knows you. So that was a nice way for her to say, you getting married to a man and being gay embarrassed me and my family. Right. And So then the only thing that he said to his mom was, listen, it was something between me and my husband, and it was a spur of the moment thing. We didn't hide it from you. We just decided to just get done with it. And the people that support us and love us for who we are the only people that were invited to the wedding because they were close enough to us to show up. And he said, sometimes you got to understand that people do things because of them and the people and the things that they love, not for other people. So then you sort of see the mom going, why wasn't I invited? I suppose you won't even give me frickin' pictures, And then the sister's embarrassed. The youngest sister thinks it's the coolest thing in the world because she loves his husband, right?
Hmm.
And then the part that I missed that I just thought it was interesting is now all of a sudden you see a private time with the father and him. And all he said is he reached around in the only way he knows how and gives him like a strangle lock around the neck. And he goes, "Don't ever forget that I think Jack is a freaking amazing human being." And he let go, immediate tears. Because he didn't have to tell his son he disagreed or agreed. All he needed to tell him is that, Jack is a hell of a freaking person. That's it.
Yeah,
You know,
I
but
love that because it's such simple,
It's the
yeah,
understanding
yeah.
of it.
yeah, but the whole movie, it sort of looked like he was like upset.
Well, it's that he might not even understand it,
It
he
doesn't have to.
probably even if he disagrees with it. It's
Yeah,
the aspect like I brought up earlier that there's probably a lot of Thanksgiving dinners where some people didn't show up because of political reasons or whatever, and it's like, you know, that level of hate or disrespect for one another goes both ways.
right.
Um, is
But I'm
you
sorry,
know I
Matt.
don't
I'm
know.
sorry, Matt. The reason I brought it up
Yeah, please.
was again the writers and the people that are rewriting going, listen, if you put a whole family together, how many nuts and different thoughts are there? You know what I
Right.
mean? And now we're going to put this whole family together. And that's why people love watching it because everyone goes, oh my God, that's me. Oh my God, that's me. And they sit around and think, what would be the different scenarios that would happen here? Because, they're going, well, the little sister, Hunter, what is her name? The lady that like was the main star, Holly Hunter, or
Yeah.
yeah. And it's funny because finally everyone just corners her because it's nothing but a shit show. And they go, what about you? We haven't heard anything about you. And she immediately looks at Robert Downey Jr., her brother, and says, you want to fill him in? He goes, can I?
That's great.
But a lot of movies are like that nowadays
Yeah.
too, especially because like Matt brought up Christmas Vacation. Okay, how
Oh,
many
yeah.
things could go wrong and how many different characters there are in the movie, but yet they all seem to come together. The same thing with what you're describing.
Yeah.
How many Christmas movies have that in some way, shape, or form? It's a formula, I'm
It's
sure.
relatable.
Oh,
That's
Yes.
it's
totally.
relatable.
Totally. So you sit down with a bunch of very creative people and you think, okay, we got to have this as a character. We got to have this as a character. We got to
Well, it's
have
like
this as a
Seinfeld or
character.
Curb Your Enthusiasm. It's like
Oh, totally.
how could all these
Totally.
shows hit on such common things and make them so funny? It's like because we all experience them. It's like the best comedians,
Exactly.
like George
Yeah.
Carlin, can point at stuff that we all do, including himself, and we can all laugh at it collectively, even though we're all gonna go home and still do it. You know what I
Right.
mean? But we can laugh at it, and I think that's one of the things we kind of lost. Is like
Great,
it's so
great
serious
point.
now that we can't.
Yeah, it was George Carlin. I love the one time I seen one of his best stand-ups was he goes, listen, I just want you guys all to know that I'm an equal opportunity offender.
Exactly.
So while you're laughing with me while I'm making fun of another group, just know I'm coming to you.
Well, too, it's South Park is what I grew up with, and that was so similar, like Matt Stone and Trey Parker that made South Park. And so there's this one thing that happened, and I'll share it because it is religious based. And, I don't know enough about it, but I know that in Islam, like any pictures or anything of Muhammad is not allowed, like in
Right.
general, right? And since
So no
that's the
one knows
case,
what he looks like?
well, I don't know. Like
No,
that's why
I
I said I don't know enough research, right? But
I think it's all
but
just
in
very,
South
very
Park,
sacred in how you represent and talk about. I think that's what
Okay.
it
right?
is.
Okay.
But go ahead,
In
Matt.
s-
Yes.
yeah, in South Park, they made this like super episode or whatever, and it had all these religious characters in it. Jesus was in it, right? Like throwing stars and killing people as because it's South Park, right?
Right.
And then they had Muhammad in there, and they got so many death threats, right, for
Wow.
having a picture of Muhammad. So what they did with the next, they didn't want to have it blurred, but it was a multi-part series of episodes. And the next episode, Comedy Central blurred what they did for Muhammad because they didn't want to offend anybody, right? Here's the funny aspect of it. That wasn't the first time they had done that with Muhammad. They had done it years before and no one said shit about it.
So it was just a different time in life where became a bigger deal than it
No,
was
it was the
before.
news.
Ah,
In a sense, you're right. The different time in life, but
You're
look what
supposed to
happened.
be upset. You're supposed to be angry. And why aren't you angry?
got
But
it.
but 5 years ago when they did it before, no one showed up and said you need to be angry. So no one was. No one cared, right?
So here's a cool point, you
I'm sure
guys.
people cared. I don't want to say that people didn't care. I'm sure some did, but it
So
wasn't
we're
death
talking
threat
about
level.
people that are constantly challenging people's thoughts and beliefs.
Hmm.
Wow, I can resemble those people because that's the core that I come from. I mean, me and my youngest son Kyle recently, he's finally at that stage where Matt was when he was younger, where everything's a debate. You know what I mean? It's fun. Me and I missed that part. Me and Matt finally figured out each other where we don't have to get our feelings hurt as we're challenging each other's thoughts. And Kyle is at that place. And me and him have been going back and forth because he came out and said, hey, did you hear Target came out against Trump saying that when the tariffs come in, that all the prices of everything's going to go up, and the people that are the customers are the people that's paying, not you know
Not the country that's shipping it, but the people
yeah,
that
yeah.
are paying are the people
Walmart's
buying it.
just going to pass it on to people.
Of
And it
course.
was and it was funny because I said to Kyle, and I said, "Well, I used to work for Toyota." And he goes, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Well, when Toyotas from Japan first came to the United States market, they were tariffed by 200%. Because if you don't think that the big three automakers had lobbyists today, can you imagine what they were back then? All right. It's like, no, you're not selling your vehicles here. And I said, but yet Toyota's the number one selling vehicle every year. Do you understand if the 200% tariffs against Japanese Toyota, how did they pull it off? And he goes, I don't know. And I go, well, listen, what Toyota decided to do is actually start making their vehicles in America, employing American people. And those Toyotas wasn't taxed by 200%. And I seen Kyle go, wow. So, just thinking one way of the way that something would be. So people think one way, whether or not we should get rid of the IRS and just do a flat tax. Well, you could have an opinion that could be possible and still have an opinion that's not possible, but it still should stimulate some kind of deal. So
Yeah, you
Matt's
should have a
No,
conversation and
no,
debate
no,
after.
Robert. I don't know what you're talking about. No, it's my way or the highway. I'm sorry. No,
So
no.
when me and Matt used to debate, and I remember Matt saying this to me, and it really hit me in the heart. I don't know if I've told him this, but I told him, I said, do you realize the majority of the stuff that you tell me, I feel might not be right, but I feel that you're listening to someone other than you. And the only reason that I take The opposite side is I just want to challenge your thinking, for you to come up with your own thoughts instead of listening to somebody else. And I said that to Matt a couple of times, and it used to work really well until Matt came back and said, so you really don't know the answer. You're just picking the opposite side to fight with me. That's sort of fucked up. And I went, I didn't perceive it as that. See, I'm perceiving that I'm doing my best to make him a critical thinker and for him to think on his own and to basically go against all thoughts that come at him. But I never looked at it. So the reason that you argue with me this passionately is because you don't know the fucking answer. You're just doing it.
Well, that's like the classic like
Okay, I
contrarian
need to
stuff, which
stop
we all
that. I
live.
need to stop that.
Yeah, it's the devil's advocate or whatever. You know, you want people to think from every direction when they're thinking about something, because that's just healthy thinking, like going,
Yeah.
well, would it be from this direction or that direction, not just believe it from one singular direction. Um, and I do think that's a large part of critical thinking. Now, when I was a teenager, right, and I was always right, it's kind of not the right angle, because if
No.
you're if bull because it's like and that's another interesting thing about it. It goes back to the questioning of certain things, like you said with Kyle
How
and
do
the
you know
tariff
that?
stuff, right? It's like
How do you know that?
the interesting thing about the way that I think is from the moment that the United States people collectively decided, yes, this is the direction we want to go in. That's when I dropped it. Because the truth is, we're now going to see what that direction looks like, regardless of what you think or not. Regardless if it works this way or that way or this way or that way or whatever. We could live in like that what if world forever, but we won't have to, because we're going to be living in that world and we'll get to see what that's like. So I think, you know, people want to debate these things and talk about these things, but the truth of the matter is like we'll just wait and see, and that's where I kind of live now,
I
because
love that, Matt. I love that,
Yeah.
because what I said to
yeah.
Kyle in closing that argument is I just said to him, I said, there's two things that I know. I really, truly know. And I said, one is I don't know the answer. And two, I don't think anybody else fucking knows the answer. Because what we were talking about here today, a lot of the time is, again, that concept of 10,000 times failing. You know, the media, the people with the opinions are going to tell someone like Thomas Edison that he failed 10,000 times. And they don't understand when he says, no, I figured out 10,000 ways it didn't work. Because every one of those failures brings you to another thought that oh shit, what if I came at it at this angle? What if I did this? And then when that fails, well, what if I put these two things together? But the two things that didn't work in each one of those, it's always this process of elimination. And that's, as a mechanic, and the way I think about numbers is how fast I can solve a problem. When people have seen how fast I could fix an automobile or get it to handle correctly, it was because my things of eliminating stuff. So if an engine wouldn't start, the very first thing I do is take the air cleaner off, and I would just hit the throttle. And if I didn't see gas shooting in, I'm done. I'm done. There's no fuel. So you're either out of gas or the filter's plugged. See, it's a process of elimination. That doesn't mean that if I clicked it and gas did go in there, oh, you thought it was gas, so you failed. No, I didn't fucking fail. I found out that this gas is not the problem.
Yeah, well, I think that's the creative aspect, right? Like
Yeah.
when your
So
mind can
maybe
live in
the
that
spark
spot.
plugs are not sparking, right? So then the next thing I pull off a spark plug deal and put it on a deal and tell someone to turn it over, and I need to see an arc coming off that spark plug wire out to the motor. If I don't see it, then I know it's electrical.
Isn't that the scientific method that we should be following with many things?
It's yeah, the process of elimination, I think,
Yes.
is the coolest thing in the world, because everyone will attack a thing like that at a different angle. So when you have a bunch of people that are trying to solve the same fucking problem, with other backgrounds, beliefs, ways that they were taught, cultures, and they all can be okay with all working together, doing the process of elimination instead of just yelling at each other. You know what I mean? Because you got a person that goes, well, maybe there's no fuel, and people go, you're a fucking idiot. That's not the way to solve a problem.
That's the way we're trying to solve them now.
Yeah, and that's where I honestly believe, and a lot of people have been saying this. I've listened to a lot of people's opinions on stuff, and people are really uniquely at a place in mind where whatever's happening in this human invention that we got going on, whether it's the United States or the world, I think that there's a lot of people right now that are sort of like, wouldn't it be cool? Which is an affirmation that everyone should say. Wouldn't it be cool? Wouldn't it be nice if some of this shit actually worked?
Well, I honestly am thinking, like, you know, here's an interesting thing, and it's kind of a political thought, right? We kind of need, at this point, someone similar to Donald Trump on the left side. That's not an established politician for the exact same reasons we've been sharing right here.
Yep.
It's like the immediacy.
That's why
it's like playing a different.
I love Bernie Sanders.
Yeah,
I love Bernie
me
Sanders.
too.
Oh, yeah.
But it's like playing a different game, because it's like when you watch the debates or anything leading up to it, it's like Trump's playing a totally different game than the rest of these people, and he's going to win because of that.
Yeah.
Because they're not even playing the same game anymore, right?
Yeah. And
it's like, no matter how much I wanted to convince myself that it would have been otherwise, which I tried very hard.
I think a lot of people did. Look what happened.
Assassination attempt. I was like,
I'll give you.
He still might not win.
Yeah.
But
I'll give you a thought that I had this morning during my prayer time and connection time. Is we hear that Mark Zuckerberg went to Mar-a-Lago. The first thought that I had is, do you think that he showed up or he was invited? See, that's very easy questions to ask myself. And no, he was definitely invited. Then the next question, so he was invited to go talk to the pre-elected president-elect, and he showed up. He fucking showed up. And I'm going like, they couldn't, according to the news, these two could not be more different people.
That's the way they want you to see it.
Yeah. And Mark Zuckerberg's going, I got to try to figure out what their fucking plan is. Because I'm sure that everyone sees the memes, right? And so you see, you know, I've seen 2 UFC fights this year. Many I watch almost every Saturday. But one of them was a championship fighter that showed up and he had Mark Zuckerberg in his corner. And people don't know that Mark Zuckerberg's really big in mixed martial arts. Really big. And then I see an event when we went to Abu Dhabi, or this last one that happened, and Elon Musk is sitting next to Trump. And I'm like, what is wrong with some of the most genius fucking minds on the planet trying to figure out how to help humankind? It's like that's the one thing that I think is very unique, that if Donald Trump called up Mark Zuckerberg and he accepted and they sit down together, why is it bad to find the people that seem to got the most shit figured out and figure out how we all can work together? So the meme that I seen was Elon Musk sitting next to Donald Trump in his plane and Mark Zuckerberg looking through the window.
Right.
And I'm going like, where would you feel like you had it all figured out well enough that you wouldn't want to take that fucking meeting? Even if it was ego.
I think that's an issue. Yeah. Well,
even if it was ego. Well, apparently you got Elon Musk talking to you and he's doing X and he's doing spaceships and all this shit, you know, so apparently you picked your guy. Well, if you did, then Donald Trump did not call Mark Zuckerberg when we all know he fucking did. And Mark Zuckerberg was gracious enough to say, I'll take that fucking meeting because I really don't know what's fucking going on. And maybe we can coexist. You know what I mean? I'm just
Well,
like,
I think the smartest people on the planet are aware of that, and that's why they don't play those same games. Like
right,
the interesting thing about it is it's like, you know, how long we can have wars happen, whether it's with Putin or anything, and from the outside you can go, I don't see what I don't understand what people see in this guy,
right,
right? Why don't they just overthrow the government and, you know, do what they have to do? From the outside, it seems obvious, but from the inside, it's like the complete opposite.
right.
And that's because, you know, if you see someone like Elon or Trump and you go, they shouldn't talk to Putin at all because he's a war criminal, right? And it's like, do you want a world war to happen? Like, I don't understand how you think
I
the
can't
other.
believe that Donald Trump's friends with that guy from North Korea.
Well, Kim Jong-un, all these people are bad people, by the way. I'm not saying that
Of
they're good in
course.
any way. They're awful people.
But
But
they're
what I
hanging
am,
around by themselves with a bunch of yes people. They don't have anyone fucking challenging their thoughts.
right. Yeah, no, of course. And I think like that's one of those age-old things. And I sent this the other day to both of you guys in chat, and I know we're almost 2 hours into this. It seems like it just flew by. But I sent a clip, and it was President Ronald Reagan calling Margaret Thatcher, which at the time was
That's right.
in the parliament, or she was the head of the parliament, right? What do they call that? They
Prime
don't call it her.
Minister.
She was the prime minister of, yeah.
Right. And he calls her because they decided to make a decision based off information that they had that made the UK government embarrassed, basically. It
The
was an
invasion of
embarrassment.
Grenada out
Right,
off
exactly.
Argentina. Yeah.
Ronald Reagan didn't get on the news and say, we had to do it. This is the way we had to do it. He sat down at his desk in the Oval Office and called the other person and said, we messed up. We shouldn't have done that. I'm sorry that we embarrassed you in that way. That should have been done a different way. And you could hear on the phone that they both had an understanding and an agreement about what was going on. And that was the end of it, at least from my understanding.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
And you ask yourself, it's like, okay, so if someone makes a decision and the decision is messed up, like invading Ukraine, right? How do you get that person out of that situation without them feeling like a cornered dog that needs
Right.
to fight to the bitter end? Well, you probably should have a conversation about them that makes them look somewhat decent and apologize for the things that you've done and work with them on a solution instead of blaming them completely for everything and making them out to be such a pariah, which they deserve to be. Like I said, they've
Yeah.
done some fucked up shit, but
Great point.
you're never gonna get an end to these things. And you could see people show up and it's like, how's the ceasefire happen? Or how's this or that happen? Right. And it's like, because we're no longer, there's people at the table, exactly what you said. There's people at the table having a conversation again, instead of people pointing and going, you can't have a conversation with a war criminal. It's like, do you want him to be more of a war criminal? Like, how do you think Ronald Reagan sat down with war criminals? Do you think that
Yeah.
FDR sat down with Stalin? Yes, many times.
I don't think
Many,
when
many, many times.
you watch them take down the wall, you know, between East and West Germany,
Reagan and Gorbachev.
yeah, you knew for a fact that when he stood up and said, tear down this wall, you found out later that it was a conversation between him and Gorbachev. And he was saying that it would be easier that if you called it out and asked for action, that I could just allow people to do it and not fight it. But you can't say you take down the wall.
Right.
Right.
And it's your fault. So it was funny because Ronald Reagan did stand up and say, we need to take this wall down. And he goes, Gorbachev, if you listen to the words, allow them to tear down this wall. It wasn't, this is what you fucking need to do because you're a bad guy.
Well, it's like what
That would have
Churchill
been
said. right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're
Churchill was like, it's amazing the things that you can get done if you have a bunch of people that are willing to not take credit for doing it.
boy.
And
I
it's
Look
love.
at
interesting
look at
because you
the
see leaders that are great, and it's because they're
yeah.
okay with shipping out credit.
Yeah,
Look
Now,
at the
Trump obviously is the exact
Israeli-Egyptian
opposite of that.
agreement. The
yeah.
Israeli-Egyptian agreement was exactly like that. You know, these have been longtime foes, and if you can get them to sit down and say, okay, the past is the past. It's done. It's over with. Why do you have to keep going an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth? Because both parties will be blind and toothless by the end of that. So, they found common ground that would
Right.
benefit both of them in the solution of, you know what? All right, we'll give up this, you give up that, and let's come to an agreement where we can all live together in peace and harmony.
Yeah.
Okay, so at least that's with Israel and Egypt. Of course, now we have to try to figure out a way, if you're talking about the Middle East, on how to deal with the other factions that are fighting with each other. I guess Hezbollah and Israel have found a common ground, although it's still tenuous. But
To
yeah, it's a
go, to
matter of
go, to
sitting.
go, to go even hours of not shooting at each other, where people are like feeling they can fly to their house that's destroyed and try to find some personal items that mean a lot to them and their family.
Yeah,
I mean, the one thing that I'll leave you guys with, and is when I first time I went to Malaysia, right? You always got people that are teaching you about their country, so they're so proud. And one of the things I was told about Malaysia that blew my mind, I haven't brought this up in a long time, is they go, "Do you know that we're the only country on the planet that hasn't had a war?" And I went, wow. And they named their superior leader or whoever it was, right? And get this, when he became the emperor or the leader of my of the country, he purposely set land aside. So when someone tried to invade his country, he would go, "Why not? You don't do that. And I'll just give you this hunk of land." And so there was 13 times that someone tried to come to Malaysia to try to take it over. And that guy was smart enough that he goes, "Well, listen, why don't we just give you this hunk of land and you don't kill our people?" That is because we're probably talking BC times. You know what I mean? But to know that someone was that smart to go, the only reason that a country would attack us is they want something that we have. What if I just set that shit aside? Because I know that not all people think like me.
Well, it's like The Art of War. If you
And
read
I'm
the
going
book, The Art
like,
of War,
how
a lot of
fucking
that stuff,
brilliant is that? That is
yeah, a
so
lot of that stuff's
brilliant.
like anti-ego. And you have to imagine being
Totally.
a leader and having anti-ego to win the war or win the fight. And that's normally how it works. Because, like, you could see someone as egotistical as Hitler. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, uh, probably one of the most egotistical people to ever live on the planet. And you can go, how can you overthrow somebody that has such a large ego? And it's like a bunch of people that really didn't care if they were part of it or not. You know what I mean? If their names weren't raised in the conversation, and Hitler's name needed to be in every conversation. What do
Yeah.
they all say when they would sit down at the table or before, instead of praying, what would they do? They'd say, Hail to the Fuhrer or whatever it was, right? So it even went down to that level. And it's like, if you're okay with not having all of those things as a leader, odds are at some point you'll beat that because people will go, like I said earlier, tradition outweighs. Eventually, it becomes indoctrination. People go, I ain't doing that anymore. And even these people nowadays that are like Nazis, like neo Nazis, right? Absolutely tradition for some of those people, and it is obviously indoctrination.
Oh,
But
yeah.
they haven't gotten to that point. If you were raised in a family that believed all of these things, I mean, you're until you get out in the real world and have your American History X moment, like when he goes to prison in that movie and actually has his first friend that's black. You go, just another human being. You know what I mean? Like me. We relate on so many things, and you start to slowly but surely see I mean, that's a great movie about that type of stuff, but it's also a great movie about how that continues too. So,
I love
Syriana is
how
another one. Yeah.
right.
I love when people are smart enough to be open-minded enough to actually think, wow, what if I don't have it correct? It's like, that was always me. I always remember, even to this date, that, man, if I just was a little wiser, if I just was a little wiser, I could make a bigger impact and help more people. Well, why do I want to do that? Is because it's what gives me joy.
I think I'll say this. I think we'll come back around to similar times that we had after World War II because the individuality has gotten to such a point that we've elected a president that epitomizes the individual. I am the most important person, individuality. So as a society, we go, yes, this person's our savior. We're going to elect them because they're the person that said that they can save us. Now, whether or not that backfires, we'll see. But regardless of that, I think coming out of that will be because there's no way a politician could run against Trump saying the shit that we've been talking about for this podcast and beat him. Not in the current times that we live in.
No,
If you said,
I
listen,
agree.
we'll figure it out. We're trying our best. I might not be right here, but I'm willing to say that I'm not right and we'll figure it out. That person loses against Trump saying, I know and I will figure it out. But you have to be burned multiple times by that person to go, I need someone that's just straight up and says, I don't know, but we're going to figure it out as a society. And I think that that's kind of where we are. We're on that teeter-totter spot back to that. So,
And yeah, the only way around that is to witness what is going to
Well,
happen
to go
as
through it.
as
Go
of
through it.
January 21 or 20th.
Just like we just talked about, it's the world going through a process of elimination. We just have a tendency of wanting to do the pendulum swing, which hasn't worked. It's
I mean,
like,
communism's coming back in the United States, which
yeah,
is nuts, right?
yeah. Well, I guess there was some people from Palestine that were protesting that stopped the Macy's parade yesterday,
Oh,
and
really?
I heard about that. Yeah,
yeah,
they blocked
and
the
and
path.
21 of them get arrested, and I'm like going, I'm just like, in my mind, I've seen these videos where a bunch of people that want the climate to change all of a sudden decide to lay across a freeway and stop freeway traffic. And it just takes one person that gets out of their vehicle and walks up and throws them off a cliff and gets in his vehicle and drives down the shoulder. And it's like, well, wait a minute, that didn't work out. It's like, I got to go to work, motherfucker.
Well, that's the thing is like, and I think that's also another huge issue is that you just don't have enough, you don't have enough people thinking about like common human thought, right? They're
Right.
trying so much to influence it that they're not actually thinking about how humans work except in a diabolical way. And it's
Or
like, how
except
do
for
you
themselves.
yeah, how do you get a bunch of people riled up towards a cause? Well, doing violence definitely doesn't help.
Right.
How do I know that? I don't know. There's just a couple of people that actually made shit happen in this country that were anti-violence. So maybe that route works a little bit better
I think
than the
it,
violent route.
I
You know
think
what
it
I mean?
takes more intelligence to try to figure out a way or an angle to get across to someone's heart than try to
Well, it
talk to
like
their
feeds
body.
But
into
wait a minute, you
itself
mean I
because
have to think?
well,
Man.
it's like the people that are pro-Palestine are going, I can't believe that they arrested these people or were rude or mean to them or did the things that they did to them. And on the other side, it's like, who do these people think they are to interrupt a tradition, the Macy's parade,
What is wrong with you?
right? It's such an important event.
Yeah,
And
the balloon. I got to see the balloon Pikachu. Are you kidding me? You
right.
can't stop.
But
Yeah,
for
how
some
dare you
kids and some
interrupt it?
families, it is tradition and it is something important to them. And instead of thinking outside of yourself and going, how can we get this thought out to more people and get them to understand more? It's no, I need to like interrupt your life, or I need to interrupt what you're doing and make you aware because that's the way that I feel it needs to be. It's like, dude, I know enough about history to know that doesn't work.
Right.
Like you can't just treat people that way and assume that they'll be on your side. It has to come from a place of I've seen videos about what it's like to be a refugee that will make you almost want to cry.
Oh, yeah.
Why aren't those things the things that are being promoted instead of blocking a parade?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, yeah. Attention,
And it's
news,
like, well,
media.
we're blocking the parade, so then you'll watch the videos. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people did.
Nuts.
They're bringing
Yeah,
attention
it's
to the
interesting
cause.
thought.
Yeah.
And
Well, what a
I
great podcast, man.
yeah,
Again,
Covered a lot of ground here.
I love it. I love it. I
yeah.
love it.
I'm pro people, so I'm pro Israel and pro Palestine. I'm not
Oh, yeah.
pro the Israeli government, and I'm
Let's
not
live in
pro
peace
Hamas,
and harmony
but
as best
I'm
as we
pro.
can.
And not doing a political statement, but again, like we talked about in here, when someone says something simple like Yoda or something like that, where they can just say one simple word and it's not enough explanation. I thought it was really crazy when, in the debates, when Donald Trump was asked, what would you do in these words? And he goes, the very first thing I would do is I'd get people to stop killing people. See, that was not a good enough answer when it really is
It
a
is
good
that simple.
answer. It is a
Mhm.
good,
Well, you can't have a conversation when your best friend just got blown up by the opposite side, and you're going, okay, now we need to get payback for this.
yeah,
That's just the way humans work. It's obvious. So it's like
complicated,
if
complicated,
that
complicated.
yes, if it's that obvious, then it's like, well, what would be the solution? Well, obviously not that. It's that
That's my biggest
obvious.
selling, Matt. That's my biggest selling for AI right now. My biggest
Yeah.
selling point for AI is hey, before the election, I reached out to AI and even talked about it with Craig and Matt on a podcast. And I reached out to AI and I said, listen, based off everything that who's going to win the election? And AI answered within milliseconds. And it said the person that gets the most people to go and vote for them.
Right.
And it's like, no, no, it's about the policies and it's about what they did before and the shit they said before versus what they say now.
What
And
they
it's
did 10,
like,
15 years ago, 20 years
this
ago.
person
Yeah.
endorsed them or this group endorsed them. And so it's about that shit. Now it's about the person that gets the most people to show up and vote for them. That's the person that's going to win. And it's like, shit.
Yeah. And right now we're in that situation. He got the most people out to vote.
And that's the thing is like, how do you, I saw these people freak out after the election. They're like, how do so many of these people exist? It's like, you're so radicalized that you're thinking all these people are MAGA people. They're not. That's not how 80 million votes work.
Yeah.
Probably, let's be generous and give them 8 million, 10 million.
The
So
core.
what? The other 70 million people just voted because that's the way they
I
felt.
still think it's
Yeah.
smaller than that. I think it's smaller than that, Matt, because all you got to do is, again, we're talking in this
I'm
conversation.
going off of or I'm going off follower
No,
counts.
well, but here's the deal. It still is what inspires us or what our imagination is to get our ass off the seat. I know a lot of people that watched this live or recorded that voted for him, but they probably never ever seen him live.
Of course.
That's a whole different fucking group of people.
Well, and it's so simple. Humans are so simple. It's like, if you don't have a solution to their problems, then they don't care. So if you
Right.
make these massive problems and you say these are societal problems, you guys, these are massive, important problems. Like abortion is it's a massive debate, and it's always been a massive debate. And me being, I don't know, it's call it optimism or whatever. I'm going, this is such an important issue. I think that this issue is more than enough for people to vote in the opposite direction. It's just such an important issue to so many people, right? It wasn't. Okay, now what do I do with that information? Maybe so then you take a step back and you're like, it's important to me, but obviously it's not important to everybody like I thought it was. Okay.
Yeah, and then we just could sign off by very simply asking this question to everyone. If it is important to you, can you ask yourself why? Why is it important to you? because me helping people become entrepreneurs, the people that say no is me asking them simple question. Do you currently know of anyone, or you yourself feel like you've been hurt trying to be an entrepreneur? And there it is. It's, yeah, my brother got involved in one of these things and he got me to put money in and none of us made any money. Yeah, I had a girlfriend cheat on me. That didn't stop. You know what I mean? It's again, they individualize it so much.
Yeah.
There's so much. It's like, oh my God, I got hurt by this deal. Okay. Now we learn that lesson. You know, we now do the process of elimination. Are you still interested in freedom? Are you still interested in having a lifestyle that you only dreamed about? Are you still interested in making an impact in other people's lives? I believe the people that don't make an impact in other people's lives is only because they don't love themselves. That's the only reason. The number one thing comes back to love. And you got to find a way to believe that you're unique and love everything about yourself before you can help anybody.
I think that's a perfect spot to end it. Because that's a great message. You know, we talked about a lot of complex topics, some of them dark, some of them funny and stuff, and we like to make this entertaining. But I do always love ending it on optimism. So
Positive note. Absolutely.
Well, thank you, Matt. Thank you, Craig. Go ahead,
guys.
Craig, sign us out.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us. You can follow Robert Hollis at roberthollis.com. Also, if you'd like to join our exclusive communities, go to roberthollis.com/video to subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you're watching us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button right down below. And then you'll be a part of it and you'll get notified when we have these kinds of podcasts or Ask Me Anything, which is Saturdays at 12 p.m. Pacific. And there you're going to get lots of great content and you'll be able to participate in whatever special events we have coming up to help you move on to the next level. Please don't forget to like and share this video on YouTube, and please share it with others. It will help us grow our community and reach out to those with ears to hear. Blessings, and thank you guys so much to our executive producer, Matt Hollis. He's a visionary. He's part of our amazing group here. And also to you, Robert Hollis, our chief visionary officer. And, we just appreciate our CVO. Yeah. And we just appreciate each and every one of you for joining us here today on the Unlimited Wisdom Podcast, episode 31. More to come, and we hope that you will join us in the future. My name is Craig A. Jackman. Thank you so very much. Please be good to yourselves. Be cash. And until next time, bye for now.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks,
guys.
Thank
you, everybody. Thank you, Craig. Thank you.